there is a direct relationship between the plantation and our lifestyle. You know, in the Netherlands, we don't have this conversation about the past. We're dealing with propaganda films here. Men were lured to go to Sumatra to work on the rubber plantation. Everybody has a bicycle in the Netherlands, so everybody understands tires, right? It has to come from somewhere, right?
The CIFRA team has arrived at the Eye Filmmuseum in Amsterdam to speak with Hicham Khalidi, the curator of the exhibition Eyes Open, New Perspectives on the Colonial Film Heritage. We spoke with him about coloniality. Hicham explained why modern Western comfort is inextricably linked to our colonial past, and why modernity and coloniality are viewed as one and the same. This is a conversation about a complex history that shaped our world today.
It was very important for me to not select any of the artists. So when the directorship of Eye Museum asked me to do the show, which came naturally from an open call, I was very adamant to keep it as natural as possible and not to have any selection. I didn't want to curate it in that sense, because that was important for me because it grew naturally. So if I claim to understand how to work with processes such as coloniality, I do have to also look back at myself and think, what does curating do within that, right? I cannot just curate in the sense that I will choose. Not choosing is a way of curating, you know? Or saying that I will follow naturally the path that was given to me. I see that as a decolonial process, actually. You know, we're dealing with coloniality. We're dealing with a matter that is very sensitive. You know, we need to really think hard and twice and every time come back, you know, to the things that we do. Because it's very sensitive material. It hurts people. It hurts me too, looking at all these images. So that's another layer on top of that. So we're not just dealing with just images, right? And we are dealing with people that also didn't ask to be filmed at that time, right? So we're dealing with other bodies. The body in art is always present. It's something that is a medium by itself. You know, we are mediated as well by the work, right? You can also turn it around. And that sensorial is something political, you know? The way we frame things, it says something. We need to take care and have responsibility for that we bring out, that we show, that we put out, right? And the screen and the lens is a way to exert power. So how do we overcome that? You know, how do you overcome doing the same thing that you're actually trying to provoke, that you're trying to evoke, or that you're trying to not do, in a sense, right? This is the point. You know, in the Netherlands, we don't have this conversation about the past. We don't talk about the colonies. We don't talk about what we did. I mean, and this works itself in many things, like the way we approach migration, the way we think and live with, you know, Surinamese people, Indonesians, etc., etc. So for me, my wish would be then for people to come here and to see these images and understand, you know, the complexity of it at first, but also to understand the simplicity in a sense, you know, because we were there to harvest, you know, set up plantations and harvest, you know, whatever goods we could from there. And there is a direct relationship between the plantation and our lifestyle. And it couldn't have been like that without that plantation. You can see it in Sabine Groenewegen's film very clearly. That film is about sexual exploitation, where men were lured to go to Sumatra, northern Sumatra, to work on the rubber plantation. And they were lured with this idea of, you know, you're earning money, but you also can get women. You know, there's these women that are there for you. And that's what they did, you know, and a lot of children were born, and they came here, you know, in the 50s, and they were not treated in the best way. But at the same time, you see the process of raising the forests, planting the rubber tree, getting the produce out of the rubber tree until the factory in the Netherlands, Vredestein, which then produces tires. And then you see the cyclists, they come out of the factory. Everybody has a bicycle in the Netherlands, so everybody understands tires, right? So then you also understand it has to come from somewhere, right? We couldn't have had that without the plantation, you see what I mean? It's so big, but we don't understand that scale. In order to understand your own position, like who you are in a country like this, or the West, let's say. How did the West form itself, right? We say, I mean, in decolonial scholarship, we always say that modernity and coloniality are the same, you know? There could not have been any modernity without coloniality, that's what we say. And that modernity is just one idea out of the many ideas. So what happened is that we are following this modern trajectory, but we've erased all others. That's what we're saying, right? Sound is hugely important in any exhibition, and in any exhibition that I've made, at least, you know, there's always sound. Sound travels, you know, it has resonance, so you can work with it very well. You know, it gives you that sense of anxiety, you know, you don't feel very well and great, you know, when you walk through this exhibition because you're constantly nudged, you know. I'll give you an example. We are at Jamaica Prescott behind us, yeah? Imagine this film without sound. It becomes documentary. The sound makes it non-documentary. What she did was, like, you have the screen on both sides, right? So you have two images on both sides, but you have the same subtitling, the same voice. So watching the film on this side, you have a very different notion of a combination of what is said with the imagery than watching it on the other side. It's very interesting to do that. It's a very challenging exhibition in that sense. There's 5 hours of film, but there's all these different strategies. So you have to spend time, no? And I think that's very important to understand your relation with what has happened before. You know, there has always been struggle. There is a whole history of struggle. And there's a relationship of struggle that we have with other struggles. You know, what we call the coalition of struggles, for instance, or we call the coming together of struggles. And I understand it can be super harsh and frightening for you as a young person, you know, not knowing, you know, of what's going to happen. But it will give you some form of, you know, grasp or handle to understand that you're not alone in this, you know, that this has been going on for a long time. Yeah, and that was great.